I'll start with Mr. Leslie. Now, candidates all seem to agree that St. John needs to attract more business and expand its population. What specific measures do you propose to achieve those goals, and where will you find the money to achieve them?
As I've stated earlier, we need to get that industry in here. We already have incentives for small businesses. We need to get small industry, medium industry, large industry, and have them within the communities that need the jobs. I would simply direct all of the city agencies, or not that I could direct them, but I would request the council direct all of the agencies towards actively, strongly pursuing those industries with timelines, they'd have to show results. Not all agencies would be going after the same industry, different ones, different industries. Along with that, if we improve our housing stock and clean up our act, clean up our vacant lots, we'll bring more people in.
Thank you. Michelle.
Thank you very much. The wonderful thing about St. John is that we have a lot of natural attributes that people from outside of St. John see very quickly. The fact that we have a deep water port, our proximity to the United States, it makes us a very desirable place to want to do business. But the reality is, if an investor, potential investor, is looking at St. John and they see a dysfunctional council, they'll never come. So if they see a council that is working collaboratively, cooperatively, and with integrity, they'll look at a city that has its business in order and think, you know something, maybe I would like to invest there. Our quality of life is beautiful. It's a beautiful place to live. And so when someone's investing, that person is a person with a family. They'll think about what would it be like to raise their family in St. John. So if we can have safe, clean drinking water, roads that are good to drive on, we take care of some of the soft issue bylaws, it would be a lovely place for someone to come and invest. Bring your money.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you. This is where I was saying earlier that we need to be proactive and going and getting businesses in all different sectors, whether it be tourism, whether it be industrial, whether it be technology. These are any sector that we can bring jobs, good paying jobs, to St. John, and we have the people here to fill them. The last 10 years in the city, we haven't done it. And this is why we have lost 30,000 people, 40,000 people out of our city. Even in this ward, we have lost 3,000 people since last year. We need to be proactive. We need to make sure all our government agencies through City Hall are doing what they're supposed to be doing. We need to make sure we're getting our roads done. We need to make sure we're getting this housing crisis done and making sure that we showcase St. John for what St. John really is. A beautiful city to do your business, and a beautiful city to raise your family. And we need to bring people back to St. John through our business initiatives.
Barbara.
To bring new business to St. John, we, number one, have to know that living in an urban city like this, they're going to expect that they get clean, safe drinking water, that they get police protection, that they get fire protection, and they get roads that are fit to travel to work on. If we put all our ducks in a row and we make sure we're as efficient as possible and we provide a welcoming environment, I think they'll be brave enough to come in because they'll get the best value for their dollar. They'll get a home. If they were out west and they're coming here, they're going to get a mansion. You know, because our properties are available and they're inexpensive at the moment. So come to St. John, bring your business, bring your industry. There's some things on the horizon that are looking really good. If we can get this pipeline in and this fertilizer plant and look forward to providing a beautiful civic center for all their children, they'll come with their kids to hockey, they'll come to sporting events, and they'll spend money in our city. Thank you.
Graeme.
You know, I think St. John can be the best city in Canada for starting small businesses. We're small enough to navigate, but big enough to really breed brilliance. And we've seen it already in the city of St. John. We have a phenomenal ICT sector just getting started, and that has been a huge contributor to our economy in the last few years. The thing that we need to understand is that we are, and our moderator would understand this, an industrial city in transition. And we need to focus on moving, perhaps, from not just having 19% of our economy be at that primary manufacturing sector industrial work. We need to facilitate through think tanks, through collaborative meeting spaces, through startup-friendly environments. We need to stimulate growth in the creative and information economies, because those are the areas that we can grow at. Those are the areas that young St. Johners are looking to work within and are having to leave our city to do just that. If we focus on creating that environment, we will not only grow, we will thrive.
Thank you. Anne-Marie?
Well, in a city, and this city of St. John, if the taxes are too high, people leave. Not enough parks and recreation opportunities, people leave. Roads falling apart, people leave. And not enough community policing, people leave. So what we need to do is take back our community, our city, and what we need to do is have pride in what we have and make it grow. We have to work with other cities, with other suburbias, Quispam, Rothesay, etc., and have them, a lot of them work in the city, and we have to entice them to come back. But, you know, if we don't have these things and they keep leaving, then, you know, and where do we get the money to fix all of this? A lot of money has been used on different buildings, and just bad decisions have been made in the past, and we have to stop making bad decisions. Thank you.
Jerry?
Yeah, small businesses talk to small businesses from outside the city. The city itself can do a much better job. There's too many layers at City Hall. There's layers at City Hall, and there's Rothesay Avenue with the piping and that there. And it can take you a long time and a lot of different people to talk to before you can actually get something into the ground, a foundation. And I'm talking about residential and business. And I think there should be like a coordinator who can look from the planning part to the building part to the maintenance part in Rothesay Avenue and the pipes. And I think that should be done. I think it'll be a much friendlier city to build in if that would happen.
Thank you. Well, the city has a new economic action plan in True Growth 2.0. It also has an unemployment rate that's around 9.1%. How do we get that down?
It's not making 3.0 and 4.0. It's we need to the growth 2.0. It's a good idea and it's good on paper and it sounds great on paper, but if we're not really implementing it and we're not really following through with it and we're not really making sure it's effective, then it's going to be useless. This is where council needs to make sure they're getting reports back from all these agencies at City Hall saying this is what we're doing, this is what we're going after, and here's where we stand.
All right.
You know, when you look at that plan, St. John, you see this vision and it looks wonderful. It has trees and flowers and it looks very inviting. But the thing is, it takes a lot of work. And for small businesses, we have the Enterprise St. John. They're there to help the small business people. And as a small business owner, I didn't know anything about them. I went out on my own. I did the hard work, got it done. We need to know these resources are there and available. Now you can click on the website and you can see an overview, but we need to know that this is available to the public.
Graeme?
You know, I agree with Barb. We need to focus on communication between people and to the outside world. Enterprise St. John has done a phenomenal job in the past working with small business owners, but it can go further. I've noticed today they've just started a blog called Engage to try to do just that. But we need to make sure that we're continuing, not just for economic projects, as we've been talking about, but for all of our city initiatives, to set specific targets and deliverables that we can make sure that we're moving towards something, that we keep moving forward. And we need to set ambitious targets for population growth and for poverty reduction and employment and work hard towards those.
I'll just let Alan hop in.
There was, as you stated, 9.1% unemployment rate. That's just the tip of the iceberg. We have somewhere between 45 and 48% of our population that is either unemployed, drawing assistance, senior citizen, or on fixed income of some sort. That leaves less than 55% of us to pay the way. Anytime we talk about information technology jobs, my blood boils. I'm sorry. We're talking call centers when we say that. That's what everyone's hearing. That may not be what you meant, but that's what everyone's hearing. To me, that's minimum wage jobs. We do not need minimum wage jobs. We need jobs that pay better than minimum wage. Our people are starving to death on minimum wage.
Okay. We'll go to the next question from the panel. Thank you.
Candidate Michelle Hooton, one of Council's roles in managing economic growth is voting on rezoning applications for new homes, businesses, and industry. Is there any kind of growth you would oppose, and if so, why?
Well, I think that something that's really exciting, something that I didn't have the last time that I served on council, was a municipal plan. So we have Plan SJ right now, a policy that essentially is set up so that we build, we densify, capitalizing on infrastructure that's already in place, so roads, water lines, transit, what have you, so that we can have more people living in an area that we don't have to continue to spend money in terms of urban sprawl. So this policy guides council to not make decisions where you're spot zoning. So you're not putting a car wash in the middle of a residential area. So that's the type of thing that we can do. Use that policy. It was a 2-year consultation effort on behalf of the community. The community wrote it, and now it's time for council to implement it. Have the courage to stand behind it and implement it.
Thank you. Brian.
I agree. We need residential. We need residential. We need businesses with businesses. When you start mixing the two, especially if you have delivery trucks delivering to a restaurant that's in a residential area, your roads are going to get tore down faster. If you have a business in with residential, the kids aren't safer because there's going to be more traffic going into that business. So with Plan SJ, we need to make sure that it is implemented. If we paid for a study or if we got people involved in it, then we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing by them and show them that, yes, the people of St. John matter. We're listening to the people of St. John at City Hall. We're elected by you guys. We want to make sure that we're listening to you guys. We're implementing your ideas when we can, showing why it's feasible. If we can't, showing why we can't, and not just letting it go by the wayside. Thank you.
Barbara.
I live on Retail Drive. I'm Costco's neighbor. I've been part and parcel with this development support in front of the Planning Advisory Committee and had them rule in our favor, but tell us not to get our hopes up, because when you go before council, that could change. You know, people need to feel that these checks and balances, these fees, these regulations, and these administrative things that are being done will help get the proper infrastructure there so we attract the right kind of development.
This is a very complicated question for many reasons, because growth takes many forms. There are good and bad forms of it, certainly. Not all growth is good. We've seen that in the past with some of our sprawl that I believe Ms. Hooton mentioned earlier, where some of the increased infrastructure costs are actually an exponentially higher amount the further you move away from our service core, not just a linear increase. For that reason, development or growth that I would oppose would be primarily centered around those which do not mesh with Plan SJ and with our new municipal plan. A plan is only as good as the people who are enforcing it and who are adhering to it. And I feel through the recent bylaw revisions in the City of St. John, we're moving in the right direction. But we need to go even further. We need to look at how, for example, as was mentioned, stormwater impacts more in depth, not just in an engineering perspective as we do now, but at a base planning level where we can understand how we can use existing infrastructure to reduce our costs both in the present and going forward into the future.
I think there isn't too much vision from council or within the city. The Lower West Side, for instance, when I was campaigning and still campaigning there, people are unaware of the different zoning laws, etc. They have lots that are 50 by 100. And, you know, one man told me that if I tear down a building, I can't build it because of the zoning and the laws. Now, whether that's true or not, the thing is there's no consultation. They don't know who to call. They don't know, you know, how do they get to build something? Is it a one-story? Is it a bungalow? Or what is it? And, of course, consultation is very important with the citizens. And if you don't have consultation, you know, through council or through your ward representative, then where do you go? So I think it's very important that people know out there what they can build and the zones, and so that you can have mixed.
Jerry.
Yeah, Plan St. John was the most public hearing of anything ever happened in this city. There was at least 5 or 6 public hearings. Most times the same people came to it. But Plan St. John, to me, represents a mixed use. I believe there should be businesses and residentials in the neighborhoods. Businesses such as small stores and ones that won't create a hassle for the residents. And I think that in itself will increase the tax base, which is what we need. And that is in Plan St. John. Neighborhoods like the lower south end, the lower west side, north end, the mixture of like a lawyer's office, a dentist office within the neighborhood, then that area becomes a neighborhood. And that's what we're looking for.
Alan.
And wouldn't that be so much nicer if the citizens could just go to work by stepping next door to their neighborhood? See, development doesn't have to be right in the heart of a neighborhood. It can be next door. The roads that they're required to get to that the business would require to bring in their supplies and such don't have to go through the neighborhood. They can go around it. Look down the road a little ways. Black's Harbor has an international sardine cannery. They ship through the village. No one complains. Look at St. Stephen, Ganong's chocolates. They ship worldwide. Their main plant is in the heart of St. Stephen. They have a road that they built specifically for that plant. There are ways around this. But the question, I believe, was what kind of growth would you oppose? I would oppose any growth that would add on to our currently existing infrastructure, i.e., a subdivision out by the airport.
We'll just go into the open debate, but what I'll do is I'll let you finish your thought, Alan.
Thank you.
And then we'll go on.
A big subdivision out by the airport that they're going to have to add on water, sewer. We don't need those. We're paying too much for what's in the ground already. If you want to make that subdivision, please, feel free. But let's move it in a little closer. Land that's already serviced.
Other thoughts? Graeme?
I think not to debate with the question itself, but I believe we should flip this framework around. This is too often what we do in the city of St. John. We say, what are we going to oppose? What don't we want? The question is, what sort of development and growth should we be attracting? What sort of incentive should we be offering to businesses and housing stocks that we want in our city? We should be offering those incentives. I know Plan SJ and our growth strategy identifies all sorts of things, from lateral grants, connecting new developments to city infrastructure, or as was mentioned before, perhaps tax levy changes, things like that. We need to incentivize our growth in the center, change our parking bylaws, for example, to require less on surface parking next to a new business. We can do these changes rather simply, and they will help encourage sustainable growth which is good for the environment, for the economy, and for the citizens of St. John.
Thank you. I think that because of Plan SJ and because Plan SJ has identified the Lower West, the Lower South, and Waterloo Village as the 3 areas that they would like to see intensification. And intensification means that you live in a neighborhood that's convenient, that you'd have a grocery store, that you'd have a drugstore, sort of amenities that just sort of make your life a little bit like the life you would have seen in Leave It to Beaver, that you walk out your front door and it's a convenient, lovely place to live. The quality of your life is enhanced because we're intensifying the neighborhood.
Okay, Brian, your thoughts?
And Ms. Hooton is partially correct. She did leave out what they call these places. They're our priority neighborhoods. And for me, in my dictionary, priority must mean something different than what they have at City Hall, because this means we would be going into these areas and focusing on these areas extensively. But new businesses that are coming to St. John are not starting in the Lower South End, are not starting in the Lower West Side. We need to make sure we are showcasing what they have to offer as well.
Thank you. We'll go back to the panel.
This question goes first to Mr. Boyd. What are your views on Council's plans to have a private consortium build and operate a new drinking water plant for 30 years?
The P3 deal, we have no choice. We have been talking about our water, our safe, clean drinking water on every campaign I have seen in St. John, and those are the 3 keywords you'll hear in St. John on every campaign is safe, clean drinking water. I'm not for privatizing our water, but we have come to a point where we may have no choice. We have sent off the information to get approved. I think we need to make sure, if this is the way council goes, because it has not been approved yet, if this is the way council goes, we need to make sure we have our ironclad contract that states we are the water, we own the water, what exactly we're paying for, what exactly we're getting, and we need to make sure that we have a negotiator, not at City Hall, but a professional negotiator negotiating our contract for us and making sure it is the best deal that we can get for St. John.
Barbara.
Like I said, when you live in an urban center, you expect to have clean, safe drinking water. This is not going to happen overnight. This could take 10 years down the road, but I'm all for entering into any kind of a partnership as long as St. John is not on the hook for what goes wrong. I want us to be well protected so that the taxpayers down the road, my grandchildren, hopefully won't have to pay for any mistakes we might make now. We are entitled to have clean, safe drinking water, and if people hear about one more boil order, we're glad they have those checks and balances, but all they think of is, what am I getting for my tax dollars? I'm going out, I'm buying bottled water, I even give the children bottled water. You need to feel safe about your drinking water because it's a necessity.
Great.
I agree. Drinking water is absolutely a necessity for any citizen of any city in the world, which is why in the past several years of my life working in water issues at my job at ACAP St. John, I have taken a look at private-public partnerships and water systems around the world, all the way to Buenos Aires or other parts of Canada. And what I've realized is that a lot of it, as has been mentioned, comes down to the type of deal we can negotiate. And we need professional negotiators at the table. We also need a council that understands the issues behind it, so that they realize that we not only live and die by our water, which I do as I've brought my own tap water to our debate tonight, but that we need someone at the table who understands the science behind it. I've been at the city's new water testing lab in our new treatment plant out by Redhead. I know how the science works. I have the background in that area, and with that kind of background, we can ask the right questions and make sure that no matter the deal, private or public, we do what's best for the citizens of St. John.
Thank you. Henry.
I think the problem that I have is that the citizens weren't consulted on this, and anything is scary when it's the unknown, and they should have been consulted. People can say it's been going on for 6 months, but you know, a lot of people don't watch council, they don't get newspapers. So I think that we needed to reassure the citizens of St. John of what P3 really is. You can have negatives, you can have positives, and another problem that I have, and I would like to be at council when this decision is made, I understand that the application is not going to be looked at by the government until the end of June. As a result of that, what happens if it turns down? It's turned down. I mean, right now, council is not talking about anything as an alternative, and I think we should be looking at that. So I think it's very important that I be there as a councillor to work on this with the citizens.
Jerry.
Yeah, I would like to see the water definitely remain on behalf of the residents of St. John, but in a way the federal government said we'll give you $50 million and another $50 million, and if you don't go PC, you're not getting any money. So I don't think council had any choice, but I hope that if it is accepted in June, that we have lawyers that know about water treatment, et cetera, to actually draw this up, because this has failed in many places. What private company is going to come to St. John and give us water? They're not going to make money off it. And if they're making money off it, then we're going to pay for it.
Alan.
The P3 water issue has got to be the hottest topic in this city. Council has, as everyone is aware of, signed a letter of intent that has been sent to P3 Canada for approval. That letter of intent is the same as you going to the bank and saying, do I qualify for a mortgage? Doesn't mean you've got to take the mortgage, but do you qualify for it? If P3 Canada comes back and says yes, which 85% of all applications to P3 Canada are denied, then 25% of the cost of the upgrade of our new water system, which would account for a good-sized section of the water treatment facility, would be built by a private company. If we don't go to P3, or if we are denied.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. I have been to about 4,000 doors so far in this campaign, and not that I have found everybody at home, but certainly the number one discussion that I've had with voters is about water. And before I started campaigning, I was concerned that it was going to be a contentious issue, and I have been absolutely amazed at the very reasonable discussions that I've been having. Right straight across the board, people want, when they turn their tap on, to have clean, safe drinking water. And they clearly understand that the formula set out by the federal government had us have to include the 3P piece of it. And their comment back to me is, what other alternative do we have? We can't afford to fix it ourselves. And that's the truth. And so, for me, when I turn that tap on, I want my water to be clean and I want it to be safe. Thank you.
My concern when you look at the P3 question is whether or not you go with a public-private partnership or you go through traditional tendering, our water rates are going to go up. And they're already the highest in the province. What do we do to reverse that trend? Is water metering the answer? What do we think?
Well, as I mentioned, I think in an earlier question, we have to look at our usage. And if it comes down to metering, I think that's something that we'd be irresponsible not to look at. A huge number of municipalities the world over have metered water. And it's not a matter of making things more difficult for people. You could potentially save money on your water bill every year, depending on your usage. It encourages efficiency on an individual level and a more responsible use of our city's water, because we have almost 500 kilometers of water mains in our city, and those aren't cheap. We need to look at alternatives to pay for them as well. Stormwater costs us $3.5 million a year just for that infrastructure, and people don't pay directly into it at all. We could have a PAC, we could have a planning zoning system whereby we look at stormwater as an infrastructure piece, just like water and sewage, perhaps for only those landowners in excess of a certain surface area, because those are the ones would cause runoff in areas such as Retail Drive and our city's east side.
Brian, you wanted to add?
Well, water meters should be looked at. They definitely should be looked at, but also in order to keep costs down on people who may use what they're using, there could also be a cap on how much they do pay, as in what they're paying now not going over what they're paying. I mean, our water rates went up again this year. We paid over $1,000 this year for our water. I mean, and we're two people that live in one house. Other people would use a lot more water than us. So water meters may be the way for people to save.
Anne-Marie, and then I'll back to you.
I actually went on a meter, and it cost me more than the normal flat rate. If you are in an older home, and the problem is that if your taps leak, if your toilet doesn't work properly, then you have to buy all new taps, sinks, what have you, because it cost us more, so we went back onto the flat rate. So I think it really, if it's going to be the answer for St. John, for council to decide that decision-wise, I think we have to look at the pros and cons of it, because we're a very old city, and a lot of the houses that are dilapidated and people are renting them are going to pay an awful lot for water.
Barb, quickly, final comment.
Now, a couple years ago, I was reproached because I have a small business and a lot of toddlers that are washing their hands and other things. They said, I want you on a meter. I was more worried about the 4 teenagers I had on the other side of my own home. And I said, I have no problem putting a water meter in, as long as my neighbors are doing the same.
Okay.
It's fair.
Okay, thank you. We'll go back to the panel.